We're welcoming back professional sports bettor Ted Savransky, and it's a big wild card weekend, Ted. There's 4 games on slate, and been looking at some of the trends, and it's actually conflicting on different sides, for both teams. And I'm anxious to hear, and our viewers are anxious to hear what take you have on some of these games, what inside information you might have, and if you like a certain total or a side, what's kind of sticking its head out for you, Ted?
Well, let's talk about some of these trends and angles, and let me make this very clear from the get-go. I don't bet any trend or angle without doing 2 things first. One, I want to double-check the numbers because, boy, you see so many dicey numbers out there and so many guys, well, was this point spread 3 or 3.5? Well, let's just make it 6 because it'll fit into the system. You see a lot of bad database information out there because there's always questions about line parameters and where lines land and all of that sort of thing. So how plays are graded. That sometimes can create false-looking trends that might not really be there. And the second thing for me is that it has to pass the does it make sense test. I'm not looking for the every other Thursday, the road, the underdog of 17 points or more. That kind of stuff to me is a little bit ridiculous.
Yeah, me too.
If it makes sense and if it fits into my handicap, and if I'm confident in the numbers, so I guess there are 3 caveats with trends. A, B, and C, yeah, I'll absolutely make a bet with one of those trends as perhaps the central tenet of my thought process in that situation. But by themselves, trends should point you perhaps into a direction, but it's not enough to get to the betting window.
I like that outlook because, for me too, after looking at the numbers, breaking down stats, there's that common sense part of it for me that's going to be the deciding factor, and that's just something that's internal, and a lot of that plays into egos and athletes and coaches and this and that. I was wondering what your thoughts are on this Kansas City-Houston. What do you think the chances of an under could possibly cover in this game?
Well, let me talk about the side real quick here because this is one of those trends that I wanted to talk about today, and that, of course, is. And this one's very simple. It passes the does it make sense test.
There you go.
Here's the trend. Dating back to 2004, NFL teams that enter the playoffs on an 8-game or longer straight-up winning streak are 0-13 against the spread in their first playoff game. It makes sense. Gee, these teams have won all these games. They've attracted all this betting market attention. They're likely to be priced a notch or 2 higher perhaps than they should be. And in addition, anytime a team has won 8 or more games heading to the postseason, you know that a good handful of those wins have come against lesser foes, non-playoff teams. So again, they're going to be a little bit overvalued when they try to step them in class. So here's Kansas City. They've won 10 in a row, the hottest team in the NFL. They're laying 3 now, even 3.5 in a lot of spots on the road at Houston. I think they're a little bit of an overvalued commodity right now, especially when you start to look at who the Chiefs have been beating. The answer is nobody.
Yeah.
During this 10-game winning streak, they've beaten 2 good teams. They beat Pittsburgh with Michael Vick behind center, and they beat Denver in Peyton Manning's 4-interception game when he got pulled after halftime because he was injured and was sat for the next 6 weeks. That's it for KC. Every other win they've had during this span has come against a lesser foe, many of them against much lesser foes. So this is one where I would absolutely have to look at the Texans plus the points against the Chiefs. From a total standpoint, it's not an easy handicap for me. And to be honest, I'm not in love with any of the totals this weekend.
Yeah.
There's one we'll talk about for Minnesota-Seattle that I've got interest in. But the other 3, there's not a lot that I really like. I certainly, when I handicap these 2 teams, they're both under teams in my mind. We're not talking about explosive offenses, and we are talking about 2 teams that are in the postseason because their defense has been really good. But both teams have defenders that can score. They routinely get defensive or non-offensive touchdowns, both the Chiefs and the Texans. You've got, in terms of playmaking receivers, Macklin on the one side, Hopkins on the other, guys who can get those quick strike touchdowns. You have 2 teams that aren't great running teams that are going to throw the football around. And you've got, in particular, Alex Smith, an underrated mobile quarterback who makes a lot of plays with his legs. So I'm not in love with that under. lean in that direction, but it's not one that certainly at the current numbers I'm going to get to the betting window.
Okay, because I was kind of leaning that way also, and I know weather plays so much into it, and I thought too that Kansas City, I know the 10 wins were not against great opponents, but that defense has really seemed to lock down under Andy Reid. So I just thought, and I was wondering what your thoughts were on that, because I'm kind of leaning that way. Another very interesting one, and whether you look at it defensively or not, I mean, this used to be the other way around. Pittsburgh used to be known for its defense. What are your thoughts on Pittsburgh at Cincinnati? That just jumped up another half a point. What I just saw, Pittsburgh -3 now, Ted.
Yeah, and the -3s are really coming up across the board today. The line was sitting at 2.5. I expected to go to 3 once the Bengals announced that McCarron was expected to start on Saturday night, and that's exactly what it's done. And from a trend standpoint, there's another long-term trend that's absolutely worth mentioning here. And that trend, again, has this one is all strength of schedule component. When you look at the advanced metric strength of schedule numbers, let's say using, say, Jeff Sagarin's numbers for an example, over the last, I believe you date back to 2002, which is all modern era of NFL, all modern era of playoff format. For the wild card round, here's about as simple a trend as you can find. You take the team with the stronger strength of schedule, team that faced tougher competition in the regular season, and you bet on them in the wild card game. You've done that every year in every game since 2002. You're 37-14 against the spread with one push. That's pretty good
That's damn
as far
good.
as a long-term tracker. Although, and in every year it's either won or pushed. There has never been a year during this entire span where it has cost bettors money. Although it did go 2-2 last year, did not produce a profit. And of course, that strength of schedule metric says to take the Steelers minus the points in this one. Pittsburgh with the tougher strength of schedule than Cincy. It also says, and let me just get these so I get them all right. It says take Kansas City against Houston. It says take Pittsburgh against Cincinnati. It says take Minnesota as a home dog against the Seahawks. And it says take Green Bay on the road at Washington. I've stepped in front of that trend, but it is absolutely something that bettors need to be aware of, or should be aware of, and should be familiar with. And in this case, obviously, it's going to make the case for Pittsburgh. That being said, I think Cincy's the better of the two teams. No way I'm laying a field goal on the road with the Steelers.
Yeah, me neither. And I think Cincy's defense is much, much better. Pittsburgh's got too many holes back there. But that's a very, very interesting stat, Teddy. Thanks for bringing that to the light. I had no idea about that. And numbers don't lie. And you've said that to me before. Numbers do not lie. So very interesting. The Green Bay Washington, I've watched that line bounce around and opened up at +1, then Pick'em, then Washington -1. Today I looked across the board, not even too long ago, Washington +1 across the board. What's happening there? What's going on with the movement there?
Well, and this is really, there are two issues in play here. One is that the advanced metrics are going to favor Green Bay. And what we saw initially, an initial market surge with Washington played good football down the stretch. Green Bay did not. If you're basing your wager on this game on current form, you can make case the Redskins should be 3 here, 3.5, 4. I mean, significant differential between the current form number and the market number. What the market number is taking into effect is the fact that, hey, Aaron Rodgers has a whole bunch of playoff wins under his belt, as the Packers do. Kirk Cousins and Washington, not so much. And, of course, Green Bay, while they didn't play well down the stretch, they did play a tougher schedule than Washington. The Redskins have had injuries in the secondary, et cetera, et cetera. So what we've seen here is there's kind of a battle between the groups that are factoring in current form versus the groups that are factoring in the long-term angles and the other factors. And you're seeing a significant difference of opinion between those two groups, obviously, with this number bouncing back and forth. I think Green Bay does go off as the favorite by the time Sunday rolls around. But clearly, if the number gets any higher than Green Bay -1, we're likely to see some wise guy money come in from the groups that like Washington and get involved with the Redskins at that number.
Yeah, yeah. You know, the Redskins, they're playing good ball. Kirk Cousins, he's got confidence now, and he's got his teammates, believing in him, and that goes a long way. And I was always a Jay Gruden believer, and I just knew it was going to take time. You know, he had a mess when he got there. So I have a question that's really kind of off the radar here. Let's say Washington gets this win, Ted. Green Bay, they've been under McCarthy now for a minute, and there's that saying that sometimes coaches get stale. Would you foresee, and again, this is if they go out in the wild card round, would you foresee possibly a coaching change in Green Bay?
I doubt it.
Okay.
I really doubt it. But I'm not a big Mike McCarthy fan, and the more I read between the lines of what Aaron Rodgers has been saying in recent weeks, I'm not convinced he's a huge Mike McCarthy fan either. So
yeah,
there's a chance that he could go if Green Bay is one and done. But I don't know that affects the handicap of this game at all.
Yeah, yeah. Now, Seattle, Minnesota, you had something interesting you were talking about there with the total. This is one that's really catching my attention. I thought this line would end up probably around 6 or 7, and it just continues to go down. It was -4 at several places just about a half an hour ago. I don't know. This is where sometimes I think common sense plays heavier than all the numbers, the trends, and everything else. And that might be, a fault of mine. I don't know. But I just think a well-oiled machine, a well-coaching machine, and you and I talked about this yesterday in the video. So I've started looking at the total in this game as opposed to a side. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, to throw out any handicap in this game. I mean, the weather forecast for Minnesota is like life-threatening conditions outside. The game time temperature is supposed to be below 0, wind chills in the -20s. This is going to be a battle of survival. This is not the type of game where either offense is going to be working like it has during the regular season. You can't expect it. Not in those type of conditions. Not outdoors in Minneapolis in January on a freezing day. No way. So the money has to come on Minnesota because Seattle was kind of getting steamed up. Don't know if the Seahawks offense is going to work. And remember, Seattle's a team with running back injuries. They need to throw the football. Passing the ball in those conditions is not going to be easy. Same thing for Minnesota. These are two elite-level defensive teams playing on a really nasty cold day. First 1 to 10 wins, first 1 to 20 wins. I'll tell you that much. I would certainly anticipate the money coming on the under in this ballgame, and it makes perfect sense. Again, your stats, your trends, all of that don't trump the simple concept of does it make sense? And when game time temperatures are below 0, it doesn't make sense to expect a high-scoring game. I'd look for that game to go under the total.
Yeah, that's definitely an interesting point. And, Seattle has to make some adjustments because of the injuries and everything else. And, we talked about it yesterday. Matter of fact, you brought it to my attention. Teddy Bridgewater's from Miami, played in Louisville. How the hell is he going to survive in this weather? So I don't know who their number 2 is, their backup, but he might be wanting to get warmed up. So, all right, well, Teddy, that's going over some of the games. It seems like you've given us some good opinions and good leans on where you like maybe to place your money. We appreciate that, and we look forward to having you back again with us real soon, Ted.
I look forward to it. Thank you.